we're talking about the different types of gender-based violence, the patterns of the gender-based violence. We talked a lot about the factors that contribute to sexual violence, as well as the impact of sexual violence on victims and the wider community. I'd now like to move on to the types of complaint mechanisms that are in place in the Gambia for victims to report sexual violence. Perhaps you can just give us an idea of the different types of mechanisms in place currently where a victim can go and report sexual violence and how that's normally dealt with, as far as you know.
Thank you. The reporting mechanism of victims or survivors of gender-based violence varies from the police station, the health facilities, being hospital or health center, the nearest one, and also Department of Social Welfare. These are the main places where victims or survivors of gender-based violence report. But sometimes the community do call the network staff directly and report a case, and then we can direct them where to go. That also takes place. Sometimes Women's Bureau may see a victim of gender-based violence, and then they will direct them to the network office, as many other members of the network.
And you mentioned that it is within the context of the one-stop center where all these different accountability mechanisms work together.
Yes.
But it does happen that they also work separately if
Yes.
the reporting is made directly to one of those organizations. Perhaps it would be good to go into some of the challenges in relation to these accountability mechanisms, and generally just how sexual violence is addressed in Gambia. What are some of the challenges that we have? I'd like to start first with the misconceptions about sexual violence, because that has an impact in terms of the reporting, but also in terms of how those cases are addressed. You mentioned some earlier, but I would like you to elaborate more on these misconceptions.
The misconception about gender-based violence in general, particularly sexual violence, is that many people believe that those who are violated sexually is because they are not cultured. Some believe that because of their dress code, that is why they are being violated. Some also believe that adult women cannot be sexually violated. Some also believe that parents cannot sexually violate their children, or brothers cannot sexually violate their sisters. Some also believe in that. So all these are misconceptions about sexual violence in the Gambia.
And what about sexual violence as it concerns men and boys? Is that also a misconception, or is that something that's understood properly?
Yes, sexual violence, the misconception about men and boys is that, in fact, in our socialization system, men are believed to be strong. They are believed even not to cry. In a Mandinka proverb where they will say, "Keo kadadoman." So they are believed not to cry. They are strong. They are believed to be tight-lipped. They should not talk about things. They go do wakom jigen, go de fatiwa. So that is how they are socialized. As a result, men, even if they are sexually violated, the society, the culture have prepared them not to talk about it. So they will hardly talk about it. But we know whether they complain or they don't complain, whether they report. Yes, some of them are victims of sexual violation. They are. But because of the way they are cultured, the way society see them, they don't talk about it. And that even make it more difficult and more interesting in the sight of men, because the little opportunity that women have to discuss about it, they don't have. Even for them to open up to even a friend will be difficult for them. It means they are a lesser man. That is the concept they have. So therefore, boys who are sexually violated, it will be difficult for even their parents to hold their hands and go and report. Even if one of them will be strong to come back to their parents and say, hey, you know what? I've been sexually violated. It will be difficult. I remember reading one case study, though it's Senegal, but I always say these are two countries that our cultures are very close. This is from Cheikh Anta Diop University. I saw this case study in a book. I cannot remember the book. This is some years ago, that this young boy said he was introduced to MSM by his uncle's friend. So you can imagine those kind of things, who knows, they can happen here. And I also work at the National AIDS Secretariat. I know they have done a research on it, though it was not published publicly, but we know those are issues that are happening. So how do they occur? Somebody is violating someone's right, but because they are tight-lipped, they will not talk about it. And that is the most difficult part when it comes to boys and men.
You mentioned MSM. For those who don't understand, what does that mean? Like, what do you understand by that?
It's men having sex with men. That is MSM.
You mentioned that generally it would be difficult for men to report sexual violence because of our society and the culture and a lot of the misconceptions. Have you come across any examples in Gambia where you have received this kind of information, not through reporting, but for instance through public sensitization? And if yes, what are some of the ways in which that story would be conveyed to you?
I cannot specifically mention a case. Unfortunately, I know that in 2015, Network recorded 15 cases of young boys, but it didn't go further to say whether that was physical violence or both sexual and physical violence. I was unable to dig into the report to bring that out. But I know 2015, 15 cases of young boys are part of our report. But I didn't have adequate time to follow up and know exactly what type of cases those ones are. But sometimes from a programmatic perspective, like the programmers who go out to do this sensitization, especially when they bring young men together, these are some of the things that you will hear from the program perspective, that young boys say that they are also part of sexual violence, like they will bring it out there. The way we have the sugar daddy syndrome, we also have the sugar mommy syndrome, that these women sometimes use that power dynamic to use young boys and sexually violate them. These are things that we will hear, though they will not come and report the case. But these are things that we will hear.
You mentioned that one of the misconceptions is that people who are not cultured are the ones who are raped. What do you mean by that?
What I mean by people who are not cultured, for some people, the reason why you are raped contributes to your own attitude. That is how some people see it. Your attitude in terms of the way you go about your life, the places that you go, the activities that you are involved. Those are the kind of things that people will think that you are not cultured. Maybe you are not a good person. Your family didn't prepare you well. Those are the things that I'm trying to say, because that is the cultural aspect. Maybe the person's appearance, the way you see it, and what that person is actually maybe totally different. Because the reason why I said nobody can guarantee that you will not be sexually violated. Imagine if you look at some very good girls, that sometimes they are trafficked. And when they are trafficked, what happened to them? That is not what they are. They find themselves in that situation. So those are some of the things that people think if you are not cultured.
So mainly based on a person's appearance, how they carry themselves, maybe the places they go
They
to.
go, and the things that they do. Like some people will feel that, for example, let's say athletics. You know, girls athletic, the way they dress, the things, most of the time they are with young men. For example, if that person is raped, how would the society view it? They will blame her for why should you go into that trade? The way you will not be properly dressed, you will always be moving with boys. And people like, for example, if a girl decided to be a model and that person report that she's raped, those are the kind of things. Because people think that, like I say in the socialization, the kind of roles that girls should do, that's what they believe. So if you change from one role to another, then whatever happened, they blame you for what happened to you.
You mentioned that people also believe that adult women cannot be raped.
Yeah.
And why is that?
Yes, until recently when many police officers are sensitized. If an adult woman walk to a police station and tell them that I've been raped, some police people take it for granted. You negotiated for something, you have a big woman like you who can rape you. If you say it to a neighbor, they will say, how can they rape you? People don't believe that adult women can be raped. People think that rape is specified for young children. But if you're an adult, you are raped, you wanted to be sexually assaulted, you called for it, you want it to happen. You are just looking a way to report. People hardly believe adults that are raped.
And of course, that's a misconception.
Yes, I know one case whereby this adult woman going to the farm and was raped by these cattle, those who normally graze the cattle. And she reported it, and we were told even the cattle grazers were brought together for her to identify, which she did. But who take her seriously? They think it was she arranged for it. That's how they will see it, because she's an adult, because she's not a child. So many people believe those kind of things. If you're an adult, you report rape, you must be very strong to push your case further.
You also mentioned the issue of people believing that parents or siblings, let's say brothers or even sisters, can't rape their own siblings or children. Why have you come across cases like that?
Yes, that is what people believe. For example, in our settlements, the way we stay, sometimes people allow their boys to be big enough to be with the girls in the same room, especially if they are of the same parents. They don't think about that can happen between two of them. They are the same father, or they are even the same mother and father. They are sleeping, they continue to sleep in the same room. It could be many reasons why that happened. Poverty could be one of them. For example, if the father cannot afford, you can only afford room and parlor. You don't have a choice. So you put your children in the parlor, they sleep there. These children who are not taught about anything about their body, they don't know anything. With this internet, access to social media, looking at many things, they want to explore, they want to know. Why is this happening? Why are adults doing this? They want to understand. They began to do that to each other. And people will not believe a biological father will rape her own daughter. But these are cases that are reported to the network. Incest. Incest are cases that we see. Sometimes we see them when they are pregnant already. Sometimes you see them when it is done. And this is an area that network have been working. I know we remember a particular child was supported by the network because he's the breadwinner. He abused her and she reported. You imagine what that means. She was separated from him. And network continued to pay that person's school fees until the person went to the university. Network supported the high school. Yes, it happens. So incest, let nobody fool you. It happens in this country. Incest happens.
And the problem with a lot of these misconceptions is it actually impacts on the way that these cases are handled. So handled, you've given some examples of going to a police station and reporting, and just the belief that, not believing the victim for many reasons based on misconceptions. So it's really important about what role that has to play in how we're then able to investigate and address sexual violence. But I want to address something in more detail that you mentioned earlier, which is the culture of silence. You mentioned a few issues in the beginning about because of the way the society is, there's certain conversations that people don't have, certain taboos. But if we can just focus more on the culture of silence and the different forms in which it is manifested in Gambia, I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, the culture of silence in the Gambia is something that we are socialized. Because if something happened, particularly sexual violence, people don't want to discuss about it. And because they don't want to discuss about it, it's difficult for the case to be reported. And that has resulted to serious underreporting of the issues of sexual violence. Even if you hear the rumors, sometimes it will not go anywhere. It will be put under the carpet for the fact that either the parents or either the child is not comfortable for this case to be discussed. So, and then because of the people who maybe the perpetrators are somebody who is well known or who is a prominent person or who is rich or who is a community leader, people have to be silent over it. So the culture of silence continues even people in their professional work. It affects them, the culture of silence. Because sometimes together they will go to the police to discuss for them to withdraw that case because they don't want anybody to know about it. Nobody is forcing people to put up their case. But cases that are of high crime, I believe that police should continue, no matter what. They should continue. But the culture of silence all over encourages the issue of gender-based violence to continue. Even the other forms of gender-based violence, for example, physical violence, the culture of silence. Even if a woman is battered by her husband or whatever, the first person you want to report to maybe is your mother or maybe it's an elderly woman. But most of the time the response you will receive is, go and bear. Don't you know that we all went through this? What is wrong with you? For your husband to batter you, is there anything wrong with that? It means violence is being condoned, because that's what you are told. Do you know how many times my husband battered me? I know the multiple indicator cluster survey, commonly called MIX. It came out clearly, women themselves say that their husband can batter them if they cook and burn the food. If they go out without taking permission, they should be battered. So automatically women themselves accept it. But it doesn't mean that they accept people to violate them. It's because that is how they are socialized. They are made to believe that. Because I always argue, no woman, no human being would want you to inflict pain on her. But that is how you are battered. You are made to believe that. So I always say, look, this is not the woman speaking. These are the people in power who put this into the head of this woman. I don't believe this. That's what I normally say. And that's my belief.
So from what you've said, the culture of silence is really deeply rooted. So it's one from the victim who may not come out and report because of fear of either stigmatization or fear of not being believed or fear of being blamed. But then you also have the family on top of that. So if you do have a victim who manages to overcome all those barriers and reports, but then you might have a family that then doesn't want the victim to report for their own reasons. Are there some examples that you've come across that you can share of what some of those reasons are?
Yes, I know a young girl who was sexually violated, alleged rape, but she didn't report until she became pregnant. And herself, her mother, and the police gender child welfare officer was in the network office, and she was explaining her story. And her mother was only negotiating that if this child delivers and the father of the child didn't accept the child, that would be a very big disgrace to their family. As a result, all what she is negotiating is the rapist to accept that he's going to marry the girl and then give a name to the baby. Meanwhile, the mother of the rapist is saying that my son will not marry this girl. This is not what I planned for him. Let her go and deliver. Maybe when the worst comes to the worst, we may name the child. So you can imagine the negotiation now is the victim and her mother begging the rapist and his mother. So this is a real example that we have seen.
And from what you've said, it seems to be a very common example in Gambia of the way in which people settle rape issues where there's a child involved.
Yeah, they settle it. Settle down for marriage, settle down for accepting the child. Those are some of the things.
What about, as you know, it is a society that's very community-based, and there are instances where people live together in the same compound, so you have different families in one compound. Have you come across examples where that happens, where, let's say, a rape by a young person occurs in that household by someone else, let's say a neighbor, and how that's handled because of that very close-knit community in a compound? Have you come across that kind of example?
I may not remember that vividly, but I remember happening in the same compound, and these are first cousins, and it has generated a lot of issues because the case was a police case. It went to court. It brings a big difference with the family, and to the extent that the victim and the parents have to move out from the compound because of the blame being thrown at them, the insults being thrown at them. But because they cannot cope again, they have to come back, because that was a family compound anyway. They have to come back there. So it's sometimes very complex. It's more than just the medical, psychological, economic, but it can even go sending you out. So we have seen a case like that.
And that's something that you've just illustrated about how sometimes, even if the family wants to take action, sometimes they don't even have the means to do so, because it might involve having to leave a family home or a particular compound, and there may be nowhere else to go. As far as you know, are there any shelters in the Gambia that cater to victims and victim families in such situations?
There is no such designated center for victims and survivors of gender-based violence. However, the shelter for children, Bakote, is being used temporarily for victims of sexual violence. But that goes with a lot of challenges because the place was not designated for that kind of people. And when they are there, they must be there for a specific period of time. And sometimes they have to go out. Sometimes the place is overcrowded. They cannot admit because they don't have space. Sometimes there is not enough resources to take care of the victims or survivors in that place. So in a nutshell, there is no designated place where we can call this is a safe haven for victims or survivors of gender-based violence.
And when it comes to sexual violence, it is one of those violations that people refer to as a situation where a victim is victimized twice. There's that double victimization. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it's manifested?
Yeah, sexual violence, the victim is victimized in many ways. Like you are already sexually violated, and then you cannot say your story because the society is pressing you not to talk about it, either family or whatever. You are going with that pain, and then you are staying with your perpetrator, or you are seeing your perpetrator every day. You don't have control over that. Maybe you are in the same compound. Maybe your houses are very close. So every time you see that person, you are being victimized because you are within the same place, and you cannot talk about it. So sexual violence victims actually, in many times, they undergo this, especially in the Gambian context.
And that's in relation to having to remain silent through no choice of your own. It's one thing if a victim chooses to remain silent voluntarily for whatever reason, but it's the social context that forces that. What about the double victimization in relation to victims who actually come out and tell their stories? What are some of the ways in which that is manifested?
Yeah, I just want to use the Tufa campaign as a typical example. For the first time, we have a Gambian lady who comes out openly. But look at the mixed feeling in the society, in social media. How much she has been re-victimized by how some people see it. So when you come out, you face a lot of victimization. They call you names, they tell you everything, because some will tell you, why is it that when it happens, you didn't report immediately? People need to understand that sexual violence is so complicated that hardly, apart from a young girl, very small, it happens to you, you just go out like that and report it. You think twice, because you are thinking that if I report, what is going to happen to me? My immediate family member, what is going to be their reaction? The community, what names are they going to call me? How are they going to look at me? So you think about all these things. You keep on contemplating, should I keep silent? You go to bed, you don't sleep. You even ask yourself, the service providers, what am I going to receive from them? From the police, the social worker, the healthcare service, what am I going to receive? How are they going to view me? So you keep on asking yourself this multi-million question. Sometimes it takes you time for you to make courage to go and speak out. Maybe you start speaking with somebody you think is very close to you, whether a friend or a family member. You feel that person's reaction and see how the person is going to react. The moment that person reacts negatively, then you withdraw. Sometimes people use tactics, not telling you directly they are raped, but they try to bring stories that a young girl was raped, so and so thing happened, what do you think about it? And they see your reaction. That reaction makes them to speak or to keep quiet. Because I remember a PLHIV who always said she watched television together with, with her family members. And anytime the issue of PLHIV comes to the TV, they will be talking negatively. So anytime she comes for counseling, if you ask her, are you ready for a treatment disclosure, because somebody to help, she will tell you, no, the people I think should be my treatment partner. The way they are seeing HIV, if I disclose, I am finished. So the same thing, people who are raped, that's how they feel. They feel the pulse of people close to them, how they will react. If they cannot see any support, they keep quiet. But as time goes on, if they are empowered, they feel that they should talk about it. So let people not take it for granted that even if people wait 30 years, they talk about their rape, listen to them, believe them. Don't try to say that they are lying.
And that's quite an important observation, because it's quite often that people delay reporting sexual violence. You mentioned that at the network, one of the things that you do is document sexual violence, but without necessarily taking action until the person is ready, if they choose to take action. But it's just important to document it so you have that information, and you then have a choice as to what you want to do with it. But nonetheless, we understand why people delay reporting. Like you said, it's important to believe them. When it comes to, if someone goes through all those barriers and actually reports, so the barrier of being blamed as a victim, all the community pressure, the family issues, and actually manages to come and report something, what are the challenges within the system that then create obstacles to addressing sexual violence properly? So I'm looking at, for instance, issues to do with police stations, the people you've mentioned, police stations, maybe even prosecution of those cases, how it happens at hospitals, just briefly, because I'm sure we'll get Dr. Duffy to elaborate on that. Exactly. What are some of these challenges within the system that then make it more difficult for sexual violence?
The main challenges will start at the police station. our police stations are not gender friendly. When you go to the police station reporting about sexual violence, it's an open place. It's very difficult to even narrate what happened to you. So we need to work towards having a police station which is gender friendly, where these people can narrate. That's a big challenge at the police station, the way the cases are handled. The way the cases are escorted to the one-stop center is a big challenge, especially if it is not escorted by the police gender and child welfare unit, those of them who don't put on uniform. But if a uniform police escort a sexual violence survivor to the hospital, all eyes are on them wherever they move. Wherever they move, people are looking. Something went wrong. Is he a criminal? What happened? Is he rape? People start contemplating. So where is the issue of confidentiality anymore? Because Gambia is a small community. When I enter here, how many people call me by name? If I go to the hospital, I'm a victim of sexual violence and they see the police. Everybody will, I saw Haddy Mbooge at the hospital, but she's being escorted by a police. I don't know what happened. That is something that we need to work on and improve. And that is why we are talking about the one-stop center, having a permanent gender-based violence police officers taking duties to be stationed there so that when the case comes, they are already there. Nobody will see them moving. That's the idea of the one-stop center anyway. That is a big, big challenge. And then if you go to the hospital have their own challenge. I know I don't want to elaborate on that. I know the medical person will come to elaborate on that. But do we have the kind of facilities that we actually need to make sure that we collect those critical evidence that is going to help us at the courts? Do we have them? Is our labs prepared? The laboratories, are they prepared to do those type of tests, including DNA? Do we have that? Are we collecting those forensic evidence at the hospital level? Those are things that, is the police well equipped to collect forensic evidence, or is the hospital well equipped to do those things? Those are questions we need to ask ourselves. When we come to the issue of social workers, as far as I know, I stand to be corrected. I don't know a clinical psychosocial therapy. I don't know of one here. We need that. People are being counseled, but are they being provided therapy? Therapy is different from counseling. When you are being given therapy, it's a healing process, which needs to continue until the person is totally healed, go over that depression. Do we have that? I always say the beauty about Gambia, the therapy we have is our belief. You are a strong Muslim or a strong Christian, and you listen to your religious leaders, and that is your therapy. That's the therapy we have. But apart from that, do we have therapists there for us when we have issues? That is a big challenge. When we come to the prosecution department, the investigation will go on and go on. Whether investigation is taking place or not, the police knows better. I don't know. But I know if one case is reported, sometimes it will take like 2-3 years before the investigation and the prosecution of that case will be completed and decision is making. It takes a very long period. This is somebody whose right has been violated. And you are asking the person, come today, come tomorrow. That has an economic cost to that particular person because he has to pay fare to go. We know that when the case is going on, government provide them with legal services. But my transport fare going up and down, I have to do that. And I don't come alone if it is a minor. Me and my parents will be paying fare going up and down. Imagine you want to do that 1 year, 2 years. You get tired and just give up. That's what happens sometimes. They're tired and just give up. And that is to the advantage of the perpetrator. Because the court will be calling that court. You will not come. When they are tired, I think the lawyers will say they stroke it out. You are done because you are not appearing, but because you are tired. One case you are going over and over, and nothing is happening, and it's painful. You say, you know what? Let life continue. That's what happened. So delay in the prosecution process is another thing that discourages survivors of gender-based violence to give up. Even if they don't withdraw, that in itself makes them to withdraw. because cases are adjourned, until the network, sometimes we are even lost. We ask ourselves, what about case A, B, and C? We say, hi, we don't even know whether that case is ongoing. That's how far it goes. So these are some of the challenges in the entire system that also discourages people to even report. The other thing is in the gathering of the evidence. If tangible evidence are not gathered, you go to the court. The defense lawyers are very strong. They are very experienced lawyers. They have been in this work. They defend the perpetrator. At the end of the day, the person is acquitted and go. So that discourages other ones to say, hey, why should I go to court? If A was acquitted, B was acquitted, why should I go there? I will not have justice. Everything boiled down to the evidence. The evidence. And up to the time, I know police have this reporting form that they give to medical doctors. I hope Dr. Dafe will talk about it, which is not updated. That even itself tie the hands of the medical people to bring out certain evidence. But Dr. Dafe will talk more about that. So all these are things that are something that affects the victims or survivors.
These are very serious issues that you've mentioned. You haven't touched upon the issue of cases being withdrawn. What are some of the reasons why that happens? And yes, what impact does it have? Because overall, all these challenges that you've listed are ones that frustrate the victim, but essentially allow the perpetrator or alleged perpetrator to not face justice, essentially. But these are problems within the system. So when it comes to withdrawal of cases, what are some of the issues associated with that, or what are some of the social issues that have an impact on withdrawal?
Cases being withdrawn normally are done at family level. Families of the alleged perpetrator and the families of the victim will go into negotiations. And when they go to negotiations, the victim's family will say that we want to withdraw this case. That's how they go about it. The negotiation is normally between the perpetrators, alleged perpetrator's family, and the victim. They discuss these issues, and they decide that they want to withdraw the case. They don't want the case to continue from the police station, much more to the prosecution department, sometimes as early as that. I remember one case that went for prosecution, but eventually, when they want to negotiate, the child herself was removed from Gambia and went to Senegal. So it's out of reach, the victim. So how can you proceed with such cases? Sometimes the police also, their hands are tied, sometimes. But I always say the investigation should be expedited, and then things taken to the prosecution department for them to forward it to justice, whatever they can do in their means to make sure that these cases are quickly prosecuted.
And generally, at the end of the day, you have all these challenges that prevent cases from being either prosecuted or having high conviction rates. These are things that can be fixed, can be changed. But one issue for us is, are the people who are dealing with it trained enough to deal with it? I mean, you have mentioned some experts when it comes to the care team. You've mentioned the gender unit at the police as well. And you and I know that recently the Ministry of Justice launched a sexual and gender-based violence unit. But to what extent are the people in general that the victims come into contact with at these various systems, to what extent are they really trained to handle this? Or is training only limited to very few people? And so victims may be out of luck, depending on who they interact with.
Well, considering the area of healthcare service providers and police and social workers, the training have covered quite a good number because it's ongoing every year. Like even this year, Network have conducted such training like 2 or 3 times, targeting police, social workers, and doctors. But the category of the team that needs to be trained I believe, are the magistrates and other things who take decisions. They need to be trained to understand the issues very well. Because, yes, they are trained lawyers, they know the law to their fingertip, but they need to understand the social and other dynamics in these issues so that when they are making decisions, they are making informed decisions. For me, I think they should be involved more, they should be trained. It's good news that when the Minister of Justice launched this sexual and, gender-based violence unit, but I don't know what they are actually doing. I cannot talk anything about that. But we just hope that that unit will serve like building capacity of lawyers, magistrates, preparing them better how to handle this issue, how to expedite cases. We hope that the unit is also responsible for that. I really don't know what the unit is doing. So far, I don't know that.
Well, that brings us into the issue of recommendations, which is our final topic. Having identified these multiple challenges, what are some of the recommendations that you would make for the TRC in terms of our work to make institutional and legal reform recommendations, but also generally to all those working in sexual and gender-based violence? What are some of the issues that you've realized within, as part of your experience and some of what you've dealt with that would really help in terms of addressing these issues properly, in terms of ensuring that victims do have justice and ensuring that accountability measures are in place, including counseling and other issues that you've highlighted?
Okay, can I kindly refer to my document to make sure that I really put these recommendations very well? When it comes to the recommendation, I would like to recommend that the Gambia, we are talking about this security sector reform. I want to recommend that it should include thorough education of law enforcement officials in dealing with sexual and gender-based violence cases. In other words, the security sector reform should include mainstreaming the issues of gender-based violence in their reform. And they should also enforce institutional policy and laws of the land, regardless of who is involved. In their security sector reform, it should clearly come out that no matter what position you hold at the security or wherever, they should be held accountable if they are part and parcel of sexual violence or other issues of gender-based violence. We know that in the security sector, everything is about command base. And this command base can give privilege to the big men over the young girls. So this is something that should come out clearly in the security reform. That should come out clearly. There is nothing like command when it comes to issues of my body. No command should come on that. That should come out clearly. That is something I want to recommend. There should be funding to key and strategic units of the law enforcement agencies to ensure timely response and investigation of reported cases. We know that sometimes the police are seriously handicapped. The network usually provides support to the police gender and child welfare unit. Initially, we used to give them a quarterly disbursement of certain amount to enable them to take the survivor or to the victim to the nearest facilities. And we know even that is not convenient, using taxis going up and down there. So that unit should be enhanced. The gender and child welfare unit of the police department needs to be enhanced. I recommend there should be a separate entire complex for them, whereby they can have enough space to counsel these people, to investigate, not compromising their privacy and confidentiality, and to enable them have the resources whereby they can carry out full investigations timely. I also want the strategies to address sexual and gender-based violence. We all know that require multi-sectoral approach. There is no one individual institution that can do it. That is why we need a multisectoral approach. And there should be active participation of the communities. The communities, these things happen in the communities. Community have a broader definition. Even institutions can be considered communities. So we need to ensure that they are fully involved in this. And there should be a strong political will and commitment at the highest level. I want to emphasize that. Issues of gender-based violence, let the political leaders not downplay it. Because looking at the statistics, the national statistics that GIBOS does under what they call demographic health survey, the last one which was conducted said that 41% of women 15 to 49 years of age have one time in their life been physically violated. And it says 5% of the women of that same age category, 15 to 49, have one time encountered sexual violence in their life. And GIBOS is presently conducting another demographic health survey. It's an interest area for the network. Therefore, network and their partner, Action Aid, have mobilized funds up to 800,000 to support GIBOS to make sure that the issue of sexual violence come out very clearly in this national survey. So that is something that the authorities need to know, that if 41% of women and girls are saying they have been physically violated, if 5% of women some years ago said that one time in their life have been sexually violated, that is a very serious issue. So they need to look at that.
You mentioned GBOS. Would that be the Gambia Bureau of Statistics?
Exactly. GBOS is the Gambia's Bureau of Statistics. We need to strengthen and expand the one-stop center approach for the management of sexual and gender-based violence. We need to support and strengthen it. And this can only be done by government's commitment and support. The network, being a civil society organization, spearheading this, cannot continue to do this. This is government's primary mandate as duty bearer to fulfill this for the women and girls in this country, and boys and men. They are responsible as duty bearers. So they should enhance and expand the one-stop center approach throughout this country, so that the woman in my village in Dankunku can easily walk and enter into the one-stop center. Does not need to travel all the way to Bansang Hospital just to get that services. We need to improve on the reporting mechanism by introducing a toll-free hotline which is accessible to all. In our work, that has been a very big challenge. I remember we were tasked as network to develop a TOR for a toll-free, which we did. And we share with the Women's Bureau, the department responsible, of course. And now that we are blessed that we have a Minister for Women, Children, and Social Welfare, I'm strongly recommending for them to push that agenda. We need a toll-free line where people can call. I believe if that happens, the number will increase. The number of reported cases will increase. And also we know it's resource intense. But government need to understand that, look, these are women and girls of this country that need to be protected. These are boys and men in this country that need to be protected. So they need to mobilize funds. And to the TRRC as well, this would come out clearly in your recommendation, that look, for this work to be sustained, so that when the TRRC close beyond, government should work closely with civil society to make sure that it continues. It doesn't mean that TRRC closed, everything broke down. We don't pray for that. We continue, the good work of the TRRC continues beyond the TRRC mandate. Our social development programs should empower people to discuss such matters and fight to end sexual and gender-based violence in our communities. We need to break some of those social barriers. We need to break them, and the breaking will start at household level. We cannot wait to break it at community level. Let us start at our household level. That is the first unit where we can break this silence. Prepare our children, talk to them about sex and sexuality. We need to break this taboo, because even if we don't break it, the world have advanced. Gambia, almost every household have a smartphone. So children have access to the smartphone. So they have automatically break the taboo. They are seeing it with their eyes. So why can't you prepare your child before he or she is messed up? There should be a special focus on research, education, and training in building capacities and expanding supports to communities that need assistance while targeting behavioral key. In this, I want to challenge the University of the Gambia. The University of the Gambia should consider partnering with agencies in researching this area. That is the essence of university in the country, not just sending our children for them to graduate. Let them do researches on these critical issues that are affecting us and give us feedback, concrete evidence. So I'm challenging the University of the Gambia to do that, and then to set up a program in social work. The University of the Gambia is not doing any program on social work. They started a diploma in social work and it was closed long time. I'm recommending to the government and the University of the Gambia to come up with a program, a degree program in social work, and eventually making sure that they have a system that is going to graduate social workers in clinical psychology so that they are licensed social workers. That is what we need in this country. Look at the mental health in this country. Some of you who have an opportunity, please visit Tanka Tanka. You will be devastated. You know that some of those people are there because they don't have those continuous psychotherapy going on for them. That is why they are there. The nurses there cannot handle those cases. So that is something that I'm tasking the University of the Gambia to kindly open this program, social work program up to a licensed social worker, so that we have therapists all over this country. The other thing I want to recommend is a continuous education and training for law enforcement and the justice system on the right-based framework to development and better documentation of cases. The government and other stakeholders should address issues of social and economic determinants of health, education, employment, and housing. For example, creating safe space, shelters for victims. We need that. We need safe space and shelters for victims. The government should work on that. Government should make it mandatory to all the government institutions, including private and civil society, to put in place sexual abuse and harassment policy. Not only putting it in place, Gambians are very good in writing very laws and policies, and they all gather dust. There must be somebody to monitor that. The mandatory should go along. Every institution must have somebody to monitor that sexual violence and sexual harassment policy. We need to have it at our workplace. People are not speaking out, but this is something that is happening because the network went extra mile to bring even house helpmates for sensitization. We hear their stories, how they have been sexually harassed and violated. We brought a support staff like secretaries for sensitization. We hear their stories. So what we are saying, we heard from people who live those kind of things. So we are saying that please, government put a policy in place. And if they put it in place, let the last person in the office, which is very important, the cleaner, very important person, to the CEO, everybody to be sensitized and know what the policy contains so that they can be able to report issues when they have been violated. I want to challenge government. We know that under the Domestic Violence Act 2013, Section 9, has clearly said that the government should establish a domestic violence support fund. This is in 2013. Up till today, I'm talking here, there is no fund being allocated to that. And this is a law. So government in itself has contributed in violating the right of victims. They themselves have contributed because we have a law that asks the government to do B and they are not doing it. So they are condoning it. They are not even helping the victims. So I'm challenging the Minister of Women, Children and Social Welfare to push very hard to make sure that in the next budget speak, this fund is available for the victim. As at now, the network have mobilized funds through their strong partner Action Aid International, the Gambia. We make sure that we support victims in their education, ensuring that sometimes they have this economic empowerment program like entrepreneur. We give them some money to go in for business. We support their legal fees, especially those that are like domestic violence. We pay the lawyers to go and stand for them, like divorce, like property issues. We pay that for the victims of domestic violence from the network. We support the shelter for children by providing feeding, buying condiments and taking it there. But we think that government have put this in the Domestic Violence Act, Section 9. Let them please put money aside to make sure that these things run. We want government to improve the use of social media. We also contribute the improvement of the use of social media, and even doing social marketing in creating awareness on this issue for the young generation. We need to do that. Social marketing of the issue of sexual and gender-based violence is important, meaning you tailor-made it. You tailor-made the messages. You make sure that young people, this is what message is good for them. This is what is good for the teenagers, the adults. We need to work together to do that, to make sure that from the schools, across all the institutions, everybody is aware of the issues of sexual and gender-based violence. Finally, I want to say that government should consider providing subvention to key civil society organizations working in the area of sexual violence. For example, the Network Against Gender-Based Violence is a unique opportunity for the government, where they have bring the public, that is the government key departments, together with civil societies. Like almost 45 organizations are members of the network, including young organizations. We all came together. Government can use that platform to make sure that they continue their work the way it will benefit the population at large. The network goes further to make sure that its members are trained, they have the capacity to be able to work on these areas. So I'm recommending strongly to government to provide subvention. Some other governments are doing it, working very closely with the civil society. And finally, our UN systems. The UN systems should really support the civil society organizations more. They should support more, not on piecemeal basis. I know sometimes they support the network, but I call that on a piecemeal basis. They should provide support to the network, which will take like a kind of implementing partner to make sure that you can evaluate what you are putting your money, what impact is that making. So these are my recommendations, and if I am allowed, I just want to quickly to thank those who make us to have this network as the way it is.
You'll actually get a final statement, so I don't know if you want to do all of that together at the end.
Okay, I thought I am doing it once and for all.
No. Thank you very much for those recommendations. A lot of food for thought, very useful for us in terms of our work. The last issue that I would like to touch upon before I hand over to the commissioners is one that is very controversial in the Gambian context, and this is the time to have more and more difficult conversations if we're ever going to progress and make change, and that's on the issue of marital rape. I know that this was a recommendation for the Sexual Offences Act 2013, and from a lot of civil society groups, including the network, if I'm not mistaken. Can you tell us, even though changes occurred at the end, but can you tell us what are the issues linked to marital rape in the Gambian context and why you felt it was important to recommend that this be criminalized in the Gambia?
Well, when the Sexual Offences Act is being formulated, a lot of consultation have been done, civil society around the area, but equally a lot of consultation have been done with the religious leaders as well as the parliament caucus group that are responsible for that. And during these consultations, this is where things that people frown over their faces, things that National Assembly don't know to the floor are removed. And the civil society and even some government institutions feel that it should be there because they felt that, especially those who work in the health sector, who work in the sexual and reproductive health, have received women who have issues about it. Because we know that having a relationship should be done and when all of you are at the same level. That's the ideal situation. Unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't happen like that. And when that happens, the woman, again, is the victim who will have some injuries, some bruises, and these are reported. So some people felt that it should be there. But consultation with religious leaders in the religion that I belong, which is the Islamic religion, said that that has no place in the Islamic religion. There is no place where the husband doesn't have the right to have affairs with the wife. That is what the Islamic perspective. And where they base their argument, I cannot recall, but they said there is a verse in the Quran which says that your women are your farmland. You can go there anytime and cultivate. Literally, this is what they said. Where it is in the Quran, I don't know. I hope I didn't misquote the Quran. May Allah forgive me. So this is what they said. So as a result, Gambia being 90-something% Muslim, there is no way that can go from here to here. But in the same vein, we don't talk about marital rape, but we have a program that we call Young Couples Training Program. In the Young Couple Training Program, what we do is to make sure that we ask the young couples to dialogue. One thing in our work, particularly in my work, from community health nurse to all these areas, I know there is little dialogue between partners, especially when it comes to sex and sexuality. They don't discuss it. That's the reality. People will marry for centuries. They have all their children. They never discuss about sex and sexuality. They don't know what happened. Because that is a taboo. So they think that they cannot discuss with their partner. So we are encouraging for them to discuss. We think when they discuss, this issue of marital rape will be a foregone issue because we will understand that I need to discuss with my wife. I need to bring my wife to my level of the same desire. And if they understand that all these issues will not happen. So that is the role that network is playing, trying to tell couples, please discuss. Even issues of STIs, couples don't discuss. They don't discuss about it. What the healthcare system will do, treat the woman, because normally the women go to the reproductive clinic. They are the first person to report. So they give them a small card and say, if you go give this to your husband or to your partner to come. So when you come, it's the nurses who will actually explain everything and give you treatment. That should not have taken place in the first place. You should have discussed among yourself and know something is wrong with one of the partners. But these are the things, because sex is a taboo. It's not being discussed, so all these things unfold. So that is why marital rape is a no-go area in the Gambia. The only thing we can encourage is to encourage partners to discuss whatever happened within their maritals.
So essentially, because you see this as sexual violence, the way to deal with it is to go around and try to use soft power to get people to talk about it and hopefully through that influence and reduce the occurrence of it, or hopefully dispel with it altogether. Yeah. You mentioned STIs, that would be sexually transmitted infections. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I've come to the end of my questions. Thank you very much for answering them and for educating us on all these important issues. I will now hand over to Madam Chair for the commissioners to ask questions, and then you will get a final statement at the end of it. Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Lead Counsel. Thank you, Madam Haddy Mbooge Barrow. I will use Horaja's word, where she said, thank you for educating us. We have been educated. It has been a very useful day for us in terms of the fact that you have willingly shared your knowledge, your expertise, and your experience with us and shed light on many of the myths and misconceptions that surround this very sensitive issue. When you started, you said you are a dropout of the formal school system. But I regard you as a champion.
Thank
a champion
you.
In all rights, in that you have not only consolidated your education at other levels, but that you have spearheaded a campaign which other women with higher qualifications than you have chosen not to tread that path. You are passionate about it, as you showed here. You are knowledgeable about it, and you are committed to bringing about transformative change in this society in which you live. From the perspective of the TRRC, you have provided us with information that will enable us to reach conclusions and formulate findings based on your recommendations. We don't even need to go further to look for recommendations, and make recommendations in our final report, but also help us to determine appropriate reparations for the victims. For the wider society, we hope that those who have been listening have learned useful lessons that enhance their understanding of what sexual gender-based violence is, and that it will enhance their level of understanding and knowledge about this issue, so that they accept the victims, show them consideration, and give them support as they live through this very stony stage. I think you have spoken about the stigma and the discrimination that goes with it. From the perspective of your network, you have done significant work in providing information and education to communities, to the households, to schools, to the various sectors, the health, the education, the judiciary, etc. But you will accept that there are still significant gaps that exist, and not only at the policy level, but you said a lot of people have been trained, but just like people find it difficult to implement policies, they also find it difficult to translate what they learned. Very few people walk away from workshops and training activities and implement what they learn. The others, the minute they leave the training, they have forgotten what they learned, and they go back to doing business as usual. It is now time that the Gambia learns how to do business unusual. For me, I say, toj nga yax bi. This means that you have unpacked all the issues surrounding gender-based violence. You have talked about the myths, the misconceptions, the socio-cultural realities that surround this, the need for justice, and for the security system. You have made adequate recommendations, but I just want to say that I hope that they will, as you have asked, that they integrate it into their security system reforms, and that there is adequate vetting of all security personnel, that whoever had been involved in all these things that you had talked about will not find their way into the security services. I thank you, Madam Mbooge. You've made our day very useful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Haraja, for a brilliant day. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm carried away, that's why. Come to Commissioner.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Chairperson, Madam Haddy Mbooge Barrow. I would need to seek clarification from this FGM type 4, which is the dangerous form of gender-based violence.
Thank you, Commissioner. When I spoke about type 4 of FGM, some people refer it to as infibulation, and that is where the organ of the woman, the private part, where excuse me for my language, like I said, sexual issues are difficult to talk about, but that is where the clitoris, the labia minora, and even the labia majora are removed. Sometimes it is stitched, sometimes it's only a hole that is left. That is the worst part of FGM, that is called infibulation.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ka?
Thank you, Deputy Chair. I have a couple of questions, and the first is related to the cultural issues which you've mentioned enable sexual and gender-based violence, and even you recommended that it should be tackled. How difficult are these issues to be tackled?
Like we are all aware, culture is deep-rooted, very deep-rooted. Asking people to leave their culture will not come overnight. The people doing the work should be persistent, should be committed, should be tactful, should be patient, and should be very respectful. In that, over the time, we hope there will be changes. But my advocacy always is, please target the young people. Because if you come to me to bring about change, you are already late. All these things have already happened. So please target young people. And if you can make impact on the young people, you are so that generation to come, what you are working on will be eradicated.
Thank you. The second question is, have you observed links between gender-based violence and sexually transmitted diseases, STDs? That you
Come
mentioned?
again?
From the cases that you've handled, do you observe any link between gender-based violence and sexually transmitted diseases, STDs?
I would like to leave that question to the expert coming on the, that's the doctor. Maybe he would explain, but the little I know is that are some of the consequences, the impact. When people are sexually violated and they are not taken to the hospital on time, for some precautions to be taken, which of course Dr. Dafe will elaborate, to prevent the transmission of STI, including HIV, by applying PEP, and to try to prevent pregnancy by giving emergency contraceptives. But I'll leave him to dwell on that hard.
The final, this is just perhaps something that you can include in your closing remarks, because you've spoken about how parents do put their children at risk of being harassed and molested. And there is this phenomena that happens during Eid prayers, that is the salibo. Perhaps we can just advise parents on those issues too.
Yeah, not only Eid prayers. If you look at our communities, you look at what is happening. Together we all have a lot of work to do. Sometimes I don't intend to blame parents, but I just want them to understand the realities. When you go around, you see very young girls, very vulnerable girls, carrying plates on their head. You value it. It will like be $50 or $100. They are very vulnerable. Somebody can just grab their hands. Gambians, sometimes, like I said, we are naive. We have a very young child going to Dara. Oh, what stops you? Just walk, drop her at the Dara and pick her from the Dara. You leave her to go. Yesterday, I know that 2 girls were severely raped. When I say severely raped, have different types of form. These ones are bleeding very severely. 2 of them, they are, I think, 6 and 7, and they were going to Dara. And Dafe was in a rush to go and see those ones at Kanifing General Hospital. So it's high time we start taking our children, dropping them at school, picking them, dropping them at Dara, and not even allow them to be selling by them own. Like some parents will tell you, maybe you have got enough, that is why you are not sending your children. But that is not the issue. You look at what is at stake. We need to look at that. When there are ceremonies, yes, like Tobaski, Koreta, Christmas, children should enjoy, but they should be guided. They should enjoy, but they should be guided. We should not just leave them by themselves. And I want to caution parents, let them not only concentrate on girls, let them concentrate on boys. There is a hidden epidemic that we don't know. So we should take care of our boys.
Thank you for a very brilliant lecture. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Hello?
Madam, looking at the statistics you have provided, it seems it's so alarming that I don't know what this country is going to head for. If you say for 2014 to 2018, there were 941 cases, and there were 208 for adults and 733 for children. That's amounting to 88%. What can we do as a nation to stop this trend? Is it possible?
Yes, it's very possible. It's very possible. Like I said, it's a multi-sectoral approach. It's very possible when our political leaders are committed. It's very possible when our community leaders are committed, when our religious leaders are committed, when our youths are committed, women and girls, everybody working together across the board. This is very possible. We know it's a very difficult task, but we can turn it around. And turning it around, yes, require resources, but part of it doesn't require resources. It's just about commitment. Imagine everybody at your household level talking about the issue of sexual violence, working hard on both girls and boys. And if you achieve that in your household, somebody else achieve, eventually that is what translates into the communities. Whatever is in the community starts at the household level. So people need to understand that we need to work hard at the household level. And that is what translates at the schools. Though we are saying the school also need to work very hard. Because normally at the education department, sometimes a teacher pregnated a child, the teacher is transferred. It's transferring the problem to another school. What kind of remedy is that? That teacher should be sacked. That's what I am saying. I'm sorry if I'm harsh, but that's my honest opinion. If you transfer that teacher, you are transferring a trouble to another school. In fact, it's high time, let me recommend this, it's high time for Minister of Justice to make sure that they have data on all those who are who are perpetrators of sexual violence. It's a red flag. People need to know them, so that when they go to communities, we watch them. Why are we hiding these people? It's high time we make a data on those people, especially those who have committed once and twice. It's a red flag that they cannot even live near our schools where children are. It's high time we do that. That's my personal opinion anyway. Maybe I'm going too much. But Imam, this is very possible. What it requires is we work together. If we work together, we can change this. And I'm saying we need to work together. We cannot go until this goes out of hand. And I want the university to tell us what is happening. Does it mean that elders are not reporting? Or are we living in a pedophile society so that we know how we go about our life?
Thank you. Imam Ki?
Madam Mbooge, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum
I
salam
greet
wa
you.
rahmatullah.
Kontaan nañ ci sa wax bi trop.
We are pleased with your statement so far.
Wax nga fi wax bu am fayda.
You have spoken well.
Lii dafa waroon a yaasal. Waroon na ëpp ni yaatu.
This should have been more expanded.
liggéey bi ngeen nekk nii da ngeen ci war a am dépasse mu am doole mu gën a génn fu ne.
The work that you are doing, you should be supported in terms of sponsorship to make it more widely available.
li nga wax nii dafa bokk ci ay diine yëpp.
What you say is included in all of the religions.
lu ñu war a leeral la.
It's something that should be made very clear.
lu ñu war a sàmm la ku ne sa liggéey mu ngi fa.
It's something that should be guarded because each one of us has a role to play in it.
xam naa ne su ngeen ci amoon dépasse bu yaatu.
I think if you had enough budget,
mën na am da ngeen ay àgg fu ne.
you would have been able to reach
ñu waxtaanee ko
everywhere.
parce que lii sutura buñ suuroon bi nga xamante ne ay musiba la.
Because these are things that we are hidden and it has brought us into not a good place.
moo tax lii baax na ci trop.
That is why this is very good.
ak ñi nga jooytul itam seen ndimbal ñoom ñi nga xamante ne dañ ci loru woon.
And those that you are pleading for assistance, those that suffered as a result,
loolu itam warugal la.
that is something that has to be.
ñu ngi leen cay gërëm bu baax a baax.
We thank you so much for that.
Jërëjëf.
Madam, you have the floor now for your final statement.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Chairperson, TRRC, someone I have worked with on this very issue, sexual and gender-based violence, and I know her capabilities. And if you are speaking in front of such a woman, you need to choose your words. I recognize you. I recognize all the commissioners, the deputy lead councillor and all the councillors, the TRRC staff, those present, those working behind the scene, the media personnel present here, the security, and the larger audience that are listening outside this hall. I say good afternoon to all of you. I want to thank the TRRC for giving me this opportunity to come here and discuss about this very fundamental issue that affects all of us directly or indirectly. And I also want to seize this opportunity to thank my parents very well for giving me the opportunity at my time to even allow me to go to school up to primary 6. That's a big blessing, because that is where everything started. I thank them for that. I thank my husband, who has been my lifelong partner throughout a very long journey. As young as I was, by the way, I'm also, I don't call myself a victim. Me, I'm so strong that I can be a victim. I'm also a survivor of child marriage, but I maintain my marriage, and my husband is my life partner up to today. I thank him for all the support. I know he's listening to TRRC, he's a big fan. I thank my children. I thank my children. All this work I was doing, I was a wife, I was a mother, I was somebody else's child. So I carry all that burden on my head. With the support of very strong men and women, I am able to achieve what I have achieved. So I want to thank all of them, my siblings, and everybody else. I also want to thank the generous directors that I work with, starting from Health, Gambia Women Finance, GFPA, coming to NAS for all the support. NAS, they require special thanks. When I was working at the network, when the network have no staff, I'm the only person doing the program, doing everything. I was a full-time employee of the National AIDS Secretariat, and they allow me to be going up and down. Though one thing I maintain, a discipline of going to work on time, finish my tasks on time, and report on time. I've never been found wanting on that in my career. And I thank God, the director gave me that space, that I was able to do that together with my advocacy work. And my husband allowed me, because I spend a lot of time during the night doing the work of network. Because that's the time I have for network at that time. And I want to thank those departments that helped me to make network, those brilliant, intelligent men who work with me, people like Njundu Drame at CPA, people like Madi Jebate representing Flyer, Kajali Sonko at the time Women's Bureau, Falu Sow, who is the current national coordinator of network at the time Social Welfare, Police Crime Unit Ansu Sonko, Police Gender and Child Welfare Unit CD Sedikan, Matilda Johnson of YWCA. They all worked so hard when we initially started the network. I want to thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Finland, through Ratas, for having confidence in us and fund us consecutively for 6 years. And that is both admin, program costs, for us to make the network to stand up. I want to thank them. I want to reflect on Action Aid for being a member, but not just a member, a committed member, giving us technical advice, both program, finance, and helping us to grow. As young as the network is, we can boost that We are one of the strongest CSOs. We are audited every year from 2010 to date. We have robust financial systems. We have good programs. We have gained recognition from international donors like Amplify Change. They give us funding of 347,000 euros. By the time we finish for 2 years, they give us another 2 years. We are just about to finish. They are willing to renew again. That shows how committed the staff that are working at the network. They are very committed. The entire membership of network. Network is a membership-led organization. Our executive are very strong executive. They work so hard. I want to thank each and every one of them. Apart from thanking, I still want to recommend to the TRRC in their reparation for the victims of sexual violence that your reparation should not only focus on how do you call it, on the psychotherapy counseling, but look at the economic bit of these people. Economic empowerment, help women. It reduces the vulnerability of women undergoing certain violence. Please build their capacity economically. These are survivors of sexual violence. Don't only build on their psychosocial aspect, build their economic part of them so that at the end of the day they can be strong enough so that the never again will happen. The never again. And I'm strongly recommending the TRRC to make sure that the government be committed in their recommendation to continue the work of the issues of sexual and gender-based violence, to prevent it. The prevention arm is very important. We should not go in for the area of management. Let us prevent it. Preventing it, everybody needs to be educated. Everybody needs to understand what is happening throughout the country. We need to make sure that we deter people doing it by setting good example. By the way, I think last week or week before last, one verdict was done, and I read it yesterday at the network office. This perpetrator is sentenced to 15 years. Those are the kind of things we want Justice Department to do. 15 years. By the time he come out, he will say never again. And those who are close to him, I hope they will know the slogan of never again. That's what we want. Perpetrators need to be punished. That's my wish. So on that note, I want to thank everybody, and that is my end of my statement. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Madam Mbooge. Thank you. Yes, okay.
Just a very quick procedural matter, Madam Chair. I referred to the data provided by Madam Barrow, and I would like to admit it as evidence as Exhibit 0089. So it is the statistics that she provided and referred to.
It's granted.
Thank you.
Still 2:30. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Haddy. Bu leen añ njëkk a soog a dem ngeen dem léegi de. Dañoo dem léegi.